probably doing what I'm doing now. He was a broadcaster. He was also an activist. He was many things. You could probably hear his show on Sirius XM on the Urban View. Anyway, this young man was a fantastic man, and he will be missed. Today, we have a young lady. She is running for Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General for Pennsylvania. Her name is Kira Bradford Gray. Hello, young lady. How are you?
How are you? And thank you so much for calling me young lady. I really appreciate it. And yes, I'm running for state attorney general of Pennsylvania.
There you go, State Attorney General. My bad. Okay. Um, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just describe us who you are, and you know.
Yes. So I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a friend. I am a sister. And those are the most important attributes of me because it allows me to see people at the very essence of being in connection with family and the types of things that you do for family. But I am also a lawyer that has been working in the space of public interest as a public defender. And I have been utilizing all that I understand about people in communities that have been vulnerable to help people achieve real justice in a system that sometimes they have been often disposable to. And so, as after working as a public defender in both state and federal practices, I then was tapped for leadership is to administer the public defender office in Montgomery County. And that's where I found really my connection and passion to people and my ability to advance systems because of all of my insight in being that daughter, that friend, that sister, that cousin in an atmosphere where social issues and people, not too many people understood our hood. But I was able to take all of what I understood about people, what I was understood about vulnerabilities, what I understood about systems, and bring them to the leadership role where we connected with people and community in so many ways that we were able to advance our system of justice in ways that now cannot be turned back, and community is now a part of the system's outcomes instead of just participants. So I am now a partner at a law firm where I do a lot of government investigations. I look at how to advance equity in government services, and I also represent women, CEOs, and elected officials all across the Commonwealth because I do believe we do need to be protected and narrated correctly.
Okay, so you're more like a protector. Is this what motivates you? Is it give protection to the community and the people and your family members?
What motivates me is that I know what it feels like to be feel vulnerable. I know what it feels like to be mistreated. I know what it feels like to have people take advantage of you. And those feelings, because I've experienced it deeply rooted in my household, when my mom and dad, who are two great, proud workers, union workers, were always struggling against systems larger than themselves and had no one to protect them. And I remember, when my dad was struggling to access the health care he needed after working hard every day on the water and sewer pipes underground, he couldn't get what he needed. And I remember feeling like, how could people treat my dad like this? Why
Mm.
isn't my dad being cared for? Why doesn't he matter as much as he matters to me? And that feeling as a kid never went away. And when I got the chance to find my voice and find my opportunity to represent and be the voice for others, I still have that same feeling and emotion when I see people being treated unfairly, when I see people being mischaracterized and misnarrated, and when I see people being disposable to a system that often doesn't care about how you fare out on the back end. And so this is where everything bubbles from me being a little girl, watching these disadvantages come on to my family, to my friends, and just feeling like there was nobody there to stand up for us.
I saw you at a meeting the other day, and something that you had mentioned about U.S. Attorney, and one of the things, if we're interested in housing, then we should want to vote for you. Make sure we understand what the role and what the job is a U.S. Of an Attorney General for this particular
Thank you for saying that.
and
Yes,
you
not the U.S. attorney.
Attorney General. I got it straight. And you were speaking about your mother. She was 77 years old. So how is your mother?
Yes, so my mother, and she's still with me today, thank goodness. She's 77 years old. And, what I'm seeing right now is, of course, she's in another vulnerable category, a senior. And seniors are really being preyed upon by larger financial institutions that are trying to make money off of their vulnerabilities. So, some of the things that I am seeing that I want to make sure that my mother has protections for are some of the things that the Attorney General's role really offers protections to so many people in so many ways. I don't think many people understand what the role is because when they talk about attorney general, they really automatically think about it as your traditional prosecutor and someone who just deals with street crimes and criminality, and that's it. Well, the attorney general role deals with not only criminality in the streets, but from the boardrooms and looking at what people do to perpetuate violence, perpetuate desperation and vulnerability. And the Attorney General's office has the ability to look at the higher level crime and go after those institutions. But it also looks at people who are doing things like predatory practices, predatory lending, stealing money off of money out from your pockets, food from your tables, roofs from your heads, people that are stealing houses from people because they know how to get to sophisticated practices that people want to take advantage of. So the example I gave before was my mom being 77 years old. She's got equity in her home and she's on a fixed income. Well, financial institutions and loan companies now are calling people like that to see if they want a few extra dollars and put them in a 30-year mortgage that is on their home. So if they pass away before that 30-year mortgage is over, then guess what? There's a lien on their home. And that
Mhm.
home does not allow for generational wealth to foster because now that institution is taking that home because the person passed away with still money owed on that 30-year mortgage when they knew they shouldn't be putting a 77-year-old into a 30-year mortgage to begin with. And there's so many people being duped by these business practices that they don't even know who is going to stand up for them when they finally realize, uh-oh, I made a mistake or I was taken advantage of.
So, can you tell me about a difficult situation that you were in and how you overcame it?
Oh my God, there's been so many. But let's start with just in my professional career. In 2019, there was a case that came into my office, and it was involving, I'm sorry, a young man who
Mhm.
was from North Philadelphia. I apologize, sir. I'm sorry. He was in North Philadelphia, from North Philadelphia, and he was charged of committing a homicide from a
Wow.
person who was rich and lived in South Philadelphia with a lot of networks and contacts and influence. And for some reason, this young boy's face just reminded me of my son. Just
Mhm.
the brightness of his eyes, the innocence in his look, and I could tell immediately that whatever was being narrated was mischaracterized because I could see in this boy's eyes he was not a killer. I could see that. I couldn't tell you why, but I could see it. And I guess, there's a saying in our neighborhood, if you know, you know. I knew. And so I started to probe about what was going on with the case, and I was being told that they were looking to get him a deal of 5 to 10 years in jail, and it was the best deal they can get him. And I started learning more about what happened, and I said, wait a minute, this boy was a victim. He wasn't an aggressor. Why are we pleading someone who was a victim and defended himself against someone who was trying to really cause them serious bodily physical harm and potentially death if the person had their way? Um, I was the chief defender of the Defender Association of Philadelphia at that time. So I was running the entire office. And I decided to step down from my leadership role and jump into the courtroom and represent this young man myself. Now everyone told me not to do it. Even they told me I was crazy. I had everything to lose, nothing to gain. But it wasn't about gaining anything political or anything notorietable. It was about doing the right thing for the right reason. And it was
Right.
very hard because if I lost, I mean, there would be serious ramifications and consequences for me. But I wasn't worried about it. And luckily, we did win, but it was still a very polarizing case that had a lot of people mad at me. That made a lot of people ask me why would I step in the way and defend someone who really had no value to them.
Mm.
And I just said, because if I had the opportunity to do something and use whatever resources I had available to me at the time, someone saved their life, I'm going to do it. And I hope that someone will do that for me and my children and my family and my village, whoever it is, because that's what we're here
Mhm.
for. We're not here for politics, we're here for people. And so that was a really hard decision. I had not been in the courtroom before that for like 5 years. So it was even harder to make sure that I would perform at my optimal level because, when you're out of the courtroom and you're being an administrator, an executive director, those skills can sometimes lag. And so I had to really dig so deep to do the right thing, even though I was being villainized for it and questioned at every level.
Well, it seems like we're always villainized and questioned at every level, regardless of what we do. I can remember
Yes.
back in times when you had the crack epidemic, and people were going to jail and getting a lot of time. People that looked like me and maybe even a little lighter, but still had some melanin in their skin. That they were getting all of this time to go to jail because of the crack, and the guy that was on cocaine, who didn't look like me at
Right.
all, he was getting probably probation or sent to one of those rehab places or whatever. But cocaine is cocaine.
That's
So
right. You can't make crack without cocaine, right?
that's right. So it just seemed unfair. So how do you deal with these policies or these different methods that people are using that would be considered unfair to us?
Yeah, so that's a great question because this is exactly what the role is, right? It looks at what I would say, it looks at where's the snake's head, right? For the issues that we're dealing with. And go after that. There's a lot of people that haven't been held accountable for their fair share of the harm. And that is what I plan to look at. So when we're talking about, just put it in terms of guns, we keep putting our fixing our sights on the kids on the street corner, which they are part of this. But how are they getting their
Mhm.
guns? Who is illegally distributing them into the hands of a young kid, into the hands of people who shouldn't have them, and turning a blind eye? I know there is a business enterprise that is dealing with these guns, and they're not being held accountable for anything that they are doing, and not even half of what they are doing to our neighborhoods are they being held accountable for. And this is where we need to stop asking people to mop the floors while we refuse to fix the
Mhm.
leak. We have to be able to go after people, even if they're sitting in their fancy suit and ties, because it's their business practices that are preying on our communities, making them more desperate, more dangerous, and less likely to achieve any kind of real enjoyment of life. So our quality of life goes down because people who sit in the seats that I'm looking for don't go after those who are doing things and going through loopholes where they can get their business practice into the hands of kids, and we're not willing to do things that close the loophole. So when I say loophole, let's talk about guns
Mhm.
again. There's such thing called, you can ship gun parts in the mail, and it be legal to ship gun parts to whomever, as long as it's not assembled. Now, just because they're parts that can be assembled doesn't mean it's not a gun. But there's a loophole that allows you to carry parts of a gun. If it's not assembled, then you're fine. You won't get caught, or you won't get found guilty of
Yeah,
violating
I
any
never.
law. But once someone assembles this gun that you shipped in the mail, it's what it is, and it's called. And they're generally guns that don't have uh, uh, traceable numbers, so you don't even know where they're being shipped to, where they've been bought, and who purchased them.
How about these 3D guns? Have you seen them? When they make them from the 3D printers, and they have no numbers, no names, no nothing, and you can actually make a gun from a 3D printer. You seen them yet?
I
Hmm.
have. And that's another thing. There's another enterprise of people that are doing that. Because the people that I used to represent as a public defender, they don't have a 3D printer. They don't own a 3D
Hmm.
printer. So who is doing this and who is creating a business out of making guns, selling guns recklessly and negligently, and letting it go into the hands of people who should not have them, that is harming our lives, harming our neighborhoods, and they're not being held accountable. We are going to be able to go after those people because we're going to have a better range of insight and foresight about where these guns are coming from. And we're going to be able to use information and intel, not just from the detectives at the Attorney General's office, but also other agencies like the ATF, like the U.S. Attorney's Office, and other attorney generals across the country that are making sure that are dealing with issues such as guns flowing in and out.
I'm a gun owner, so I can't really say I'm against guns because I'm a gun owner. But I do believe in responsible gun ownership. And this is what
Absolutely.
we don't have. We don't have a lot of responsible gun ownerships. I mean, we got it where they want to ban books because they feel the harm that it will do to their children in school, but they don't want to ban the guns that's being used. These guns are being used to go into these schools and you know harm and hurt people. I mean, it causes fatality. So I really don't
Absolutely.
understand that mentality or that concept. But to me it's a little crazy.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Can
And let me just be clear, I'm not against responsible gun
Mhm.
ownership. I don't want that to be misconstrued. I am against people who illegally distribute guns and put them in the hands of the people who should not have them.
Mm. Or maybe
I
sometimes the
believe
people
in
that
common sense
distribute it
gun
legally,
laws.
they distribute it legally, like they'll allow it to be distributed legally, like the NRA, those people, and the lobbyists that are paying up the money. They're paying people so they can continue to go forth with what they're doing with these guns and selling them the way that they sell them. You got people that's go to other states and they're buying the guns in other states, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that if they come from a state where there's no like where you don't have what do you call it open state open carry state. You shouldn't be able
Yeah.
to go to another state and buy and purchase a firearm and then you return back to your own state. You
Well,
understand?
then if you return to your own state and you can't purchase one in your own state, then you're illegally carrying a firearm. I don't care if you bought it in a state where you could buy it legally. If you bring it to your own state and you're not supposed to have one for whatever legality that we have here, then you're illegally carrying a firearm.
So basically your job as an attorney general is to do investigations.
So my job as the attorney general is to protect people from either systems or business practices, or making sure government is doing the work that the citizens need, making sure they're responsive to people's needs. And anyone who does business with the government, who denies access to people, who discriminates against people, or who harms people, the attorney general has the ability to go after them, hold them accountable with a number of tools, whether it's a civil suit or a criminal suit.
Mm.
Or you can go and try to solve the problem by coming to a consent decree where people agree to do things differently. But it's really a role that polices business practices and institutional behavior on the behalf of people.
Mm. So what would you say your greatest strengths are?
My greatest strengths are my ability to understand systems and understand how to advance systems in a way that invites more protections and more opportunities for everyone. And I say everyone because my vantage point allows me a broader understanding of the issues that households and families are suffering, where no one else, some other people who are sitting in the seat may not be able to see them. For
Mm.
instance, I understand the people who are very vulnerable, who are having a hard time finding work, are having a hard time with mental health, are having a hard time trauma. I get that. And I understand their needs. I understand where their needs aren't being met. I also understand the justice system and where it works and where it doesn't, because I've administered in this justice system. I worked in this justice system, and I have a long, well traversed understanding of all the operational goals and where it fails people. I also understand what happens to people when our systems and how much more desperate they become. And so these types of vantage points, the context that I bring, as well as my sharp legal acumen that I have been able to harness not only nationally, I know that I can use the law appropriately, invite more people into protections of it, and ensure that the vantage point in the conversation of others, so that we are advanced safety for all communities, not just some, is brought to the forefront.
Yeah, there's been an issue, a hot topic. What is the CRT, critical race theory? Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have a misconception about what exactly that is. Can you explain it?
So, critical race theory is a curriculum based education that was really started to be brought out in uh, college or post secondary schools. So, it was never something that was meant to be taught to very, very small minor kids in middle school. But critical race theory was about our systems and how there has been baked in oppression or racism within our systems and our governmental functions, and how to make sure that we understand that so that when we are now producing the next future leaders, they can then undo some of those wrongs of the past. And so it's a whole curriculum based on beginning to end. As we started slavery, coming out of slavery to moving to Jim Crow, and then moving on to more sophisticated ways that Jim Crow was perpetuated through government structures and systems when Jim Crow was outlawed. I mean, we're still dealing with some of the same issues. It's just been transferred and made more invisible, but it's still there to make sure that some people get an advantage and others are still fighting for that same benefit of the doubt. And so critical race theory wanted to make sure it documented and educated people about the true context of our history, the complicated nature of our history. And this is something that became a talking point for Republicans who want to act like now, because we are starting to talk about this more widespread and started to educate people about our government, our nation, our history, that somehow we are offending the nature of others, so that so much so that they are feeling depressed or bad about themselves, and it should be banned from being taught.
That's such a joke to me. So, by not teaching me my history, wouldn't that offend me?
Exactly, because I'm still feeling the history, the issues of my history. I'm still feeling the fact that I am not given the same opportunities that everyone has, even if we had the same resume and came from the same, neighborhood and had the same education. Just because of I'm in my skin and I'm a cross sectionality of a double negative, I'm a woman and I'm an African American woman. That always makes my path that much more difficult because of the way our society has always advanced. And that's offensive to people who have to live it every day, let alone being taught about it.
Or how about these guys? They ride around in the trucks. They got the big Confederate flags in the back, and they really got the nerve to have an American flag next to it. I served in the military. I served for quite a while. I paid my dues, and I wasn't fighting for the Confederate. And I wasn't serving in the
That's right.
Confederate Army or anything that had to do with the Confederate. And I still can't understand how people are allowed to do that, because you go to Germany, you're not going to find a Nazi flag flying anywhere. But in this country, it's like, they can just be so disrespectful and put it right in front of your face, and yet you can't do or say anything about it. But here it is, they want to ban the education that we're receiving through books, and half of the books that they want to teach us are not correct anyway. They're not 100%. A lot of them are fiction, they're not nonfiction. So I'm just wondering. I know I'm going on a little tantrum here. I apologize.
No, these are important conversations because this is another area where attorneys generals have an ability to help protect teachers who are trying to promote solid educational values, and they are teaching appropriate curriculum from getting reprimanded or even fired. Because I've seen attorneys generals across the country now stand in the way when employment discrimination or employment retribution was pushed on people who teachers who are just trying to teach curriculum that allowed kids to grow and foster a self-awareness. And our history is very complicated. We cannot run from it. It is what it is, and it's still alive and kicking today. And so, like you said, it is deeply offensive that all the heroes in some stories don't look like us,
Hmm.
right? I mean, they get to be the heroes. They get to be the ones that saved America. They get to be the ones that the stories are told. They get to be the ones that people and kids look up to. Well, where are our heroes? And we got to be able to tell our stories so they know that all that we've gone through to overcome, because that's heroic in and of itself.
Hmm. I know here in America, yeah, but then also we need to learn our ancestry to at least to find out what country we come from in Africa. So I would tell everybody of African American descent, get a DNA. This way, when you say I'm African American, you can at least say what country you come from. Me, my country is Ghana, so I'm 95% from that country. So I
Oh,
like.
let me caution your listeners or something. I don't know if you, when you say get a DNA, if you do those 23andMe and those like DNA like ancestry tests. But I will tell you this: those things, once you put your DNA into that, police departments are using those. I'm not
Mm,
saying anything. You do what you want to do, but it is something that goes into a larger database, and many people don't know it, and they need to know that
mm.
so they can make wise choices. I'm not trying to say, or like, say that everything is used for bad, but I think people need to understand that.
I think they kind of do that every time you use your credit card or you pick up your cell phone. They tap in and listening to your conversation. I used to work for the phone company, and I'm telling you, any conversation that you have on the phone is recorded. So they're constantly. It doesn't matter. They get your DNA. Well, what are they going to do
Well,
with it?
DNA
If I have to do the
is
crime.
important.
Yeah. Well, DNA is also important for a lot of medical issues as well. Not just to put you on record to have you hauled off to jail for something, whatever that you may have done in the past. It's also helps out with medical issues, and like a lot of us don't know much about who our grandfathers were, who our great grandmothers were. We don't know a lot of the medical issues that they may have had. So getting a DNA kind of helps you out with that too, because you may have some disease and you don't know where it's coming from, or disease that maybe that could have been prevented if you had that information, right?
Yeah, that's very true. I just think people should know all the full gamut. I mean, we've seen people, be suspects, not that they did anything, but they had DNA in an area and it was run through and with those things. So just be aware that these things do go in a general database that is used to run DNA for anything.
Um, okay, well, we only have a couple of minutes left because we had you for a half an hour, right? Um, I'm really glad
Yes.
that you came onto the show. I'm really glad that you got an opportunity to express and say who you were. I just got to put this out. This is GenesisRadio.com. We're part of Unity in the Community. If anybody ever wanted to give us a call, that's 888-304-4401. And if every, we got to keep our lights on. So if anybody want to make any donations, GenesisRadio.com. We'd love to hear from you. All right, young lady, and I do say young lady, I really appreciated you at the meeting, and it was very inspiring listening to you. My daughter
Oh,
listened to you during that meeting, and she was inspired by it. So,
I'm so happy to hear that because, look, first of all, I want to thank you and Genesis Radio for having these very important discussions to help us understand why we should care more about these levers of government that really can impact our lives in major ways. And I know, like I said before, people really don't understand the role of the Attorney General. But I'll leave you with this. If you care about financial opportunity and financial protection, meaning not being taken advantage of and not being discriminated against when you're trying to achieve wealth for yourself. You should care about the role of the Attorney General. If you care about health care coverage and
oh,
premiating back uh, quality services, that you should care about the role of the Attorney General. If you care about a balanced justice system that is going to go after the bad guys and not bring in people into the system who don't need to be, and incorrectly and misnarrate them, you should care about the role of the Attorney General. And finally, if you care about housing access, housing stability, and not being discriminated against for housing, then you should care about the role of the Attorney General. This role has the ability to stand in the way and make sure that people are not being taken advantage of, level set the playing field, and make businesses understand that we're not going to let you mistreat people, we're not going to let you take advantage of people, and we're not going to let you harm people.
I got one more question for you. Who do you have in the Super Bowl?
So I'm gonna go with the Chiefs because the 49ers knocked off the Eagles. So I'm gonna go with the Chiefs, although the Chiefs beat the Eagles last year. So it's hard, man. When I don't really have a pony in this game, I have to figure out a way to root for somebody. And I
Yeah.
just haven't really had that. These two don't excite me. Now, if Detroit was in it, that's who I wanted to win the whole thing.
I want to do the Eagles to win the whole thing.
Oh,
That I'm
that
an
too.
Eagles fan. I'm a Knicks fan and I'm an Eagles fan. So
That's interesting. So you didn't even ever want the Giants or Jets?
nah, I'm back in the day with Joe Namath, Broadway Joe.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I was kind of like a Jets fan then, and that's been about it. But I've been living here in Pennsylvania for quite a while, so ever since that brother became the quarterback for the Eagles, McNabb, I kind of became
Yes.
Eagle. I became an Eagles fan after that. So,
Yeah. McNabb took him to a couple of Super Bowls, but always
well,
does deserve his flowers.
yeah, I got to root for the winning team, and as long as he was on the team, it was a winning team. So,
That's right. That's
yeah,
right. It was. It was. It was a winning team. But this has been amazing. I'd love to come back again and talk about some other things because I really do like your style. I like the conversation, and I do appreciate that you are asking me questions that directly impact our communities because that's why I'm doing this to bring our communities as well as others into the vantage point of solutions and problem solving using the law. And
well,
I
we
think
love you to come on.
oftentimes,
We love for
yeah,
you to
go ahead.
come back on. We really do. We want you to come back on because we got to get that whole hour. Now,
We do. It's a
your
lot to
your
talk about.
assistant is going to be texting me in a minute because it's 6:15.
Yeah, I got you. I know. She's actually gonna, yeah, she'll be texting me too. So I'm gonna let you go. But this has been a great half hour. It felt very relaxing, and it just felt good to really talk about the issues in a way that we can just break it down and say, hey, we really need to start paying more attention to our civics and understanding what we should be asking for from the politicians that we vote in, and knowing what we deserve.
Absolutely. All right. This is Kendall, the host of the Empowerment Show, a part of Unity in the Community. Thank you very much and peace. We're out.
All right. You have a great night.
Alrighty, bye bye.